I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope for millions of Negro slaves who've been seared in the flames of withering injustice. This came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night in their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not freed. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society, finding himself in exile in his own land. But we come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we come to our nation's capital to cash a check by which the architects of this republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. They were signing a promissory note to which all Americans were to fill air. This note was a promise to all men, yes, black men as well as white men, will be guaranteed the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note in so much that the citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we come here to cast this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. So we have come here now to this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. For this is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off, nor take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise above the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit paths of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation above the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It will be fatal for our nation to overlook the urgency of this moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there's a vigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. For those who hoped the Negro needed to blow our steam and would now be content, we'll be in for a rude awakening as the nation will return to business as usual. There'll be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of this nation until the daylight of justice emerges. For there's something I must say to my people. The one who stands in the worn threshold is headed into the palace of justice. In this process of gaining our rightful place, Let us not be guilty of wrongful deeds. We shall not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking out of cups of bitterness and hatred. We shall forever conduct our struggle on the highest planes of dignity and discipline. We shall not allow our creative protests to degenerate in physical violence, for again and again we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. This marvelous new militancy, as it engulfed our Negro community, must not lead us to distrust of all white people. For many of my white brothers, as evidence of their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied in our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is strictly bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we will always march ahead. We cannot turn back. And those who are asking our deputies of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro is a victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We cannot be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy from the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging into the motels of the highways or the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We cannot be satisfied as long as our children are robbed of their adulthood and stripped of their dignity with signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York feels he's not nothing to wish to vote. No, we cannot be satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like the mighty stream. Now, I'm not unmindful, because some of you have come here from great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come here fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom has left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have become the veterans of creative suffering. So go back and work that faith that unarmed struggle is redemptive. So go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to North Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to those slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that this situation can and will change. We shall not continue to wallow in the valley of despair. So even though we are faced with difficult times of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream that is deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. These truths we hold to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream today. I have a dream that even in the state of Mississippi, a state that is sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering in the heat of oppression, will one day be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will one day grow up in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that even down in the state of Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lip dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, right there in the state of Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls, as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley would be exalted. Every hill and mountain will be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and all of God's flesh will see it together. This is my hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. Because with this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to discord the untangling cords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we'll be free one day. This will be the day, this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I see. Land where my father died, where the pilgrim's bride on every mountainside, that freedom ring. And if our nation is going to become great, these things must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of Memphis. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the highly allegations of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the convergent slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain in Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill in Mohill in Mississippi, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Once this happens, once we allow freedom to ring, once we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, we be able to join hands and sing the words of that old Negro spiritual. Free at last, great God Almighty, we're free at last.